Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how I made both the dress and the apron for my Daisy Mae cosplay from the absolutely wonderful game Animal Crossing New Horizons. I hope you like it. Enjoy! So it is a template that I purchased from Simplicity since I just don't very often do sewing templates myself, so I wanted to make sure I had one that was perfect. And I went ahead and I cut that to my exact body size so that way it will fit me perfectly. So now for the base of the dress, the template comes in about 3 pieces. There's the front piece that you will trace twice, which is what I'm doing right now with the sewing chalk onto purple silk fabric. There is also the back piece and then the actual dress bottom. And then I cut it out and I leave a little bit of extra fabric off the edge of where I trace just for like hems and attaching so that way I can... You can always cut off the extra later. You can't add more. Just remember that. And now I'm tracing the back piece twice with the sewing chalk on that same purple silk fabric. And then I'll do the same thing. I'm going to cut it out, leaving a little extra room, just like I did with the 2 front pieces. So after that, I'm going to start pinning together the back piece. So the 2 pieces are one cohesive piece, and then I'm going to use my sewing machine to go ahead and sew those pieces together. And then after it's sewed together, we can go ahead and we can cut off all that excess fabric. Since, like I said, you can cut off the excess, you cannot add more to it. So always just have excess. It's not that bad. Now I'm going to start pinning those 2 front pieces together at like the tops by the shoulders and along the sides to that one back piece. I'm not sewing in the front together, the 2 front pieces, since it's like a wrap dress. But we're going to go ahead, pin that together, and then we're going to sew basically 4 strips, 4 runs. I don't know how to... This is my first time sewing. Let's not even talk about it. 4 times you're sewing the top together, and that way we'll have the completed wraparound top. But it's going to be same thing. Pin it together, sewing machine to sew it, and cut away that excess. Now for all the exposed edges, we're going to go ahead and fold the fabric over a little bit and pin it down, and then we're going to sew all of those little folds down with the sewing machine. This is creating a hem, so that way it's nice and clean instead of like the ragged cut edges. Because even if you used a nice rotary tool, you probably didn't get perfectly clean cuts. Or if the fabric's not top tier, always make sure you add hems. They're awful. I know, I hate them too, but it's what we gotta do. So I gotta do hems all on those outer edges, except for along like the bottom of it, because that's gonna get sewn to the skirt portion of the dress. Speaking of that, I'm gonna go ahead and trace this template. It technically is 4 pieces. I did it all as one. You can do it in 4 pieces. You could probably do it all as one. Just make sure you give yourself some extra fabric if you do it all as one. But yeah, and then leave excess at the edges, of course. Go ahead and cut it out, and then I'm going to start pinning it to the top and sewing it together so I have one cohesive dress. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to, on the exposed edges, you're going to go ahead, fold over, and create the hem. And then you pretty much have like the actual dress taken care of at this point. So now we take a quick break from the dress, and with the blue silk, we're going to start working on the apron. I kind of just pick it up and wrap it around myself to measure. I'm not working with a template because it's just kind of like a square apron to measure, but I use that to measure off what I need, and then I go ahead and I cut that to size. Then I take my pins, and for the 3 exposed edges of the apron, the top portion you don't need to worry about, I go ahead and I pin to create a hem, similar like we did with the dress. For the tie for the apron, I used red silk. We're going to create a band. I did hold it up to myself to measure. I'm cutting 2 strips that are the same thickness. One will be for wrapping around the apron and tying it off in the back, and the other is going to be to create the giant bow. So I do, we fold these in half, these big strips that I've made, and I sew them together so it's like a rounded thing, and then you turn it inside out. You're going to be able to watch this whole process. I promise I won't cut too much of that down. But so I sew it, so I fold it in half, sew down that open line, whatever you want to call it, on both the main apron strip, the big strip that's going to be the bow, the little strip that's going to wrap around to hold the bow onto the apron. And then I fold those inside out and sew off the edges so they're closed. After that, for the bow, we sew that together, the two ends together, so it's like a circle, and in the middle you sew that down, but you sew it to the center of the red ribbon for the apron. Then you go ahead and you take the wraparound piece, and I just hot glued that on. And then for the apron, I hot glued it to the red bow, as the red wraparound cord as well. Hopefully this makes sense with the video. I probably don't make a lick of sense because I never make sense, but I'm hoping the video does. So here's what I mean by it's folded inside out. So now it's like a round, thick ribbon bow, and we sew off the edges so they're not just open. I did hand sew those because I was getting frustrated with the sewing machine because I kept jamming it, and I'm so afraid of it. Like this, I kid you not, I have not had a sewing machine since I was a child, and it was one of those beginner's children sewing machines. So playing with this big, expensive adult fancy sewing machine that's computerized is horrifying. So I got scared, and I started hand sewing. And then when I get tired of hand sewing, because I'm still afraid of that machine, I just crack out the hot glue, as we do, as much as I can't stand the hot glue. I hate it with a passion. We make do with what we got. So here I am hot gluing down the piece that wraps around the whole bow, and then that top edge of the apron, the one that we didn't create a hem for, that's the edge we're going to glue on to the apron band. You want to make sure it's kind of centered, so that way like it's not hanging too low or hanging too high. That part of it peeks out, so try to center it when you go to glue it down. You can also sew all of this part, like obviously if you're somebody who's really good with sewing, if you're a seamstress, go ahead and sew it. I don't, I glue. I did decide after the apron to play it safe. I added a button to the wraparound dress. This is really easy. Just make sure you mark off where the hole for the button needs to be and where the button exactly needs to be, and hand sew the button onto that portion of the dress and cut the little slit for the button. That way it just gave some added security for when I take the dress to like conventions and such. So now it's time to paint the detailing onto the apron. I'm just using white fabric paint, and I'm using those little cubes to mark where I want the little, as the kids say, hashtag signs to be on the dress. She has a total of 4 of them, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and they're kind of staggered off. So I'm going to go ahead and mark where I want those and paint that with white fabric paint and a paintbrush. You'll have to do a couple coats for this part and then wait for it to dry. The last thing to get this dress all put together with the apron is the red cord that kind of wraps around her shoulders. I just took this red cord, cut a circle, and then turned it into a figure 8, glued in the center for the figure 8 so I could take it on and off with the dress. And that's pretty much it to make the Daisy Mae dress and the apron. If you want to see me wearing this fully put together, you make sure to check out all of my pages. I'll be showing this off hopefully for a couple of conventions this year. But yeah, that's how you do it. And you can look for all the supplies that I got for this down in the description below. Thanks so much for watching this cosplay crafting tutorial. Sorry if it was a bit of a mess. If you want to see what we made actually with the finished cosplay, make sure to check the links in my description and let me know what your crafting questions are in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe so you can see what I'm crafting up next. Bye-bye!